Yeah, so that's the 5 things that I did. The first thing, have someone model to you what the interview process looks like, and how to answer these questions. 2, read the books, or the 2 Bibles. Read the 2 Bibles of cracking the PM interview and Decode and Conquer, to really get contextual understanding of how to do this and really get all these different examples and have those principles buried in your subconscious. Number 3, definitely scrounge for all the resources on the internet and generate a list of all the questions that you see on Glassdoor. Number 4, practice, practice, practice. This is by far the most important one, and practice well. Like, make sure that you're practicing so you can answer any question with one eye closed. I mean, you might not get that proficient, don't worry. Like, if you only have 2 weeks before your interview, I do think you need about, for me it took about 2-3 months consistently to really get muscle memory in. And even when I interviewed the first time, which was in, I actually didn't get the job, but I did make it all 5 rounds. But I remember feeling, as much as I had practiced for 2-3 months, on a daily basis, and had been mock interviewed and all that, by the time the interview came, I was still not really all the way comfortable. I felt good about it, and I was good about it, but there was still times where I got stuck because you're in the moment, and you will get curveballs. Like, there are going to be things that are not on Glassdoor, unfortunately, and at that point it really tests your actual depth of understanding for how to be a good PM. And when you're in that moment, you really just want to have on an unconscious level what things you need to do right, how to make these decisions, like have that good instinct, and that takes practice. If it's not naturally instinctive to you, it's going to take practice. And so practicing definitely helps mitigate those potential moments that can really make or break the interview, and make you less competitive to someone else who did take an extra time to study. Lastly, scheduling it, like really investing time to practice and get feedback as you're going to improve all the way. And when you prioritize this, like make this like your part-time job, like I said, you'll separate from the pack very easily. Those last 2 things I think are the hardest for most people to do, and that's why so very few people actually make it through. Now, I don't think you should kill yourself for this opportunity if this is not necessarily alignment. I think there's also things that you need to consider before you throw your whole life into doing this. Make sure you understand what's motivating you, because once you get the job, now you have the job. Like, you're gonna have to do it, and you're gonna have to do it well. This is a very fast-paced environment. The interview is not a joke. Like, it's not something like, oh, the interview, we don't use that stuff in the interview in the real world. No, like, if you can do that well in the interview, you're gonna be okay at the company when the real pressure is on, when you have an actual team of 25, 35, 40 people who are looking to you to help guide them and set priorities and really help deliver clarity on what they're supposed to build in terms of the roadmap and the vision. Doing the interview well means you will be good enough to do the job well, because it's once you get into the job, it's a lot. So don't think of this as like, I need to game the interview. No, like really, really take the time to really get muscle memory. It's a good opportunity to like really understand how to be a good PM. Like, take this interview process as that. So that way, if you do get the offer, you're set up for success on a fundamental understanding of how to PM, and make hard decisions and take risky bets and communicate with clarity a maybe vague or ambiguous problem for the team to understand and to help drive solutions for. This interview is a test for that. And it's not personal if you don't get the job after. When I tell you when I didn't get the job, the first loop that I did in 2017, I was depressed. I was so depressed. I had put my whole life into this interview process, and I had not interviewed anywhere else. I had not applied anywhere else. I put all my eggs in this basket. So when I made all 5 rounds but then didn't get the job, everything crashed for me mentally and spiritually and emotionally. I think I was depressed for I don't think I got off the couch for 2 weeks. I was just so depressed. And I just went through all the whole grieving process. And then some great things happened after a month later, and I got some good news on a different project. I received funding for Oculus Launchpad, so my app, I was able to ship my VR app. And in that next year, I was able to do so many great things. I was able to start my own company, and I was able to, I managed a team, and we were, shipping VR projects, and I got to do some really exciting things on my own because I wasn't getting hired anywhere else. And so being able to be self-employed after winning Oculus Launchpad and starting my own company was just everything. So when I got the opportunity to interview for the company again, a friend called me and was like, oh, you want to interview? I was like, I don't know. I kind of got a little bit burned, heartbroken the year before. I don't know if I want to put myself through that whole interviewing process. And she's like, look, it doesn't hurt. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And I did get kind of burned out from the corporate company stuff. That's a different story. I can talk about another video, starting a company as a Black woman in VR, a cold market. Like, there's a lot of tea there, but I will reserve that for another video. If you're interested, like and subscribe, and or just share in the comments that you'd like to hear those stories. I'm happy to share that stuff as well too. But yeah, I basically burned out. So she was like, it doesn't hurt to just have this in the back pocket just in case. I was like, all right, cool, convinced. So I applied the day before the window closed for applications. I got the interview again, and this time I practiced for a whole month before my first one. But because I had practiced so much the year before, and I had kept all my notes that I took when I was practicing the year before, a lot of it was muscle memory now. And then so now it was just like polishing myself up. I was just kind of like taking the dust off those interviewing capabilities. We would all like, say like, hey, does anyone want to practice right now? We'd set up mock interviews with each other. Yeah, I did that for about a month. This time went through the interview process. This time I was not that, like, I didn't need it. Like, like I was good with my own company. So I was like on the side. So I was like, this is more just like, this is like exercise. Let's just see what happens. So I'm so glad I did that. So glad my friend called me and told me to apply, because it's a life game changer for me, at least. I actually felt like I did better in my first time interviewing for the company than I did this time around. This time around, I actually didn't feel that confident because one of the interviews, through every single question I got through screening, I had already practiced a million times thanks to Glassdoor. But there was one question, an execution interview on my on-site that completely curveballed me. And that was the moment of truth. That interview was the moment of truth, because when I tell you, it was a curveball. It was unlike any other question that I had seen on Glassdoor. It just came out of nowhere. But thankfully, because I over practiced so much, when I had to think on the spot under that stress, but with like a background of a bit of a confidence that I didn't need this, I was able to demonstrate my critical thinking skills authentically on the spots. And I think that really came through. And there were some questions being asked. It didn't really, I could tell he was some signal he was trying to give me, and I wasn't really understanding what he was trying to say, but I was like, look, I'm just going to answer this the best way I can. And I had taken the whole whiteboard. I had written everything, like there was not an inch of it left for writing. And then that was it. And I remember just being like, phew. And to me, I was just so glad that I had done so much practice, because the muscle memory on the spot when you're like, under that real intense pressure, as well as when I showed up for the on-site interview, they put me in a room with 12 other people, and we're all going to interview at the same time. And I saw all these people, only one other Black girl, and I was like, oh, and they look all put together. You could tell they came from Ivy League backgrounds and like all that. They just looked so, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, this is where there's no way me out of these 12 people, there's no way. I just didn't think there was any way. So at that point, I think I was just like, F it, I'm just gonna do the best I can. And luckily the best I can was really well practiced, and I ended up getting the offer. So with that said, what are some things that I wish I known, or like some mistakes that I made? Some mistakes I made that I would recommend not making. The first time, in my first loop in 2017, the one that I didn't get, I didn't practice the leadership and drive. And I didn't know what my stories were. I thought I could wing that one. And I thought that one's a qualitative one. I've been acing qualitative interviews my whole life in the public sector and all of that. I got that one unlocked. There's something, I know how to communicate my passion and speak with integrity and authenticity, and I can do that. I can wing that on the spot, because that's just who I am. That was mistake number one. Because when we did the leadership and drive, even that needs to be structured, because you want to pick an example that really demonstrates. You're not going to know what questions they're asking you. Yes, there's a range, but you're not going to know which ones. And there's like at least 20 different types of questions they can ask you. Tell me about a time you overcame a challenge. Tell me about your biggest accomplishment. You want to tell a story that really feels inspiring, that feels humbling, that feels really powerful. You just want to tell powerful stories. And I think some mistakes that people might make is you say something that like, yeah, I did this, but it's not necessarily like inspiring or motivating or like, okay. So I would say like, you know, having some stories to pick out ahead of time for these different types of questions that like times that you inspired yourself or that just felt really good, and being able to communicate the main points in a very succinct way, like not tell that whole story in 30 minutes, but to be able to tell that story in 5, have the opportunity to share more about your skill sets through other examples, 5 to 10 minutes or so. I didn't make that mistake the second time I interviewed for the second loop. I definitely practiced the leadership and drive equally to execution and product sense, and I'm glad I did, because by the time that interview came, I definitely had the stories in my back pocket, and I was able to speak without being nervous about it and share the details and explain clearly and communicate that. And I think that made all the difference the second time around. So yeah, definitely practice all the interviews equally. Don't make the mistake of thinking one is going to be easier than other. That's not the case. 2, have frameworks. And this is, again, you'll learn this from the books. But frameworks really make a difference. I think some people make the mistake of thinking like, oh, they're not going to really want me to literally, you know, do a framework, or if I say this answer, it's going to be so textbook. And don't do that. Like, these things help you really think through. There's a reason why they work. You don't want to commit or make assumptions to things. When you're on the real job, you're going to need frameworks that are going to be life changer on your day-to-day at the job, at the company, because it's so easy to take a wrong turn. And you want to make sure you have a system in place that helps you check or cross-check your ideas and assumptions and conclusions that you're jumping to. You want to catch that before you invest a whole team and a product direction, and then, you know, and it doesn't end up working out because you didn't do your due diligence to really weigh the pros and cons of anything you chose. So frameworks are essential, and don't feel embarrassed about using them. Be more embarrassed when you don't use it, and then you lose track of what your goals were, or of what you're building or what you say you're going to build, and then that's going to hurt you more than help you. So have frameworks and really follow through on that and leverage that in the interviews. 3, another mistake people make is over-rehearsing an answer. The intention behind this interview, the objective, is to see how you will perform on the spot. When you're on the job, there's going to be crazy questions that come all day, every day, that you have to figure out how to work through. How do you come to the right conclusion, or the best conclusion, with the information that you have, and mitigate against any wrong decisions or like failures and all that kind of stuff to the best of your abilities. You need to be open and agile to adjusting to curveballs in the interview, and then making sure that you have your deep understanding of the PM fundamentals, so that way when curveballs are thrown at you, you also have that framework and that thinking in real time. I think a lot of people make that mistake where they over rehearse, but they don't understand to a deep understanding what they just did. And so when you get that curveball, you're not able to draw back to those principles that led to that perfect framework. Be more focused on really understanding why this is the right way, or why this is a good way to break down a problem and come to a solution. Understand the why behind whatever you're doing, so that way whenever you do get a curveball, you leverage that why to come up with a better solution, maybe to new information on the spot, and you're not like knocked off your feet. Like, just remember, this interview is literally demonstrating what it would be like in real life. When you're in real life and you're a PM in real life, you're going to have a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives. So you saying this is what we should do, but you don't share why, might make people not feel confident in whatever you're pushing out. And so it'll invite pushback. It'll invite people with different ideas. And if you don't know how to respond to that or adjust to that, it's going to make your job just really difficult. And so being able to communicate the why behind your decision making, and showing your thinking and weighing the pros and cons each step of the way, is going to be your strength as a PM when you join the company and you have 25 people, 50% of them are not really bought into your idea. So by showing them this is how you got to this conclusion, and showing that pathway, it invites conversation, invites inclusiveness of ideas, invites collaboration, when you can show your thinking process through that. And I think a lot of people make the mistake of assuming they want to be right, or they want to show their intuition like Chanel. So I'm an intuitive person. I'm someone who comes to the conclusion before I have really thought it through. And it's not that I haven't thought it through. It's just I've had so many diverse experiences that my brain thinks really fast, and so it's able to cross-check a lot of things and come to a conclusion that's like, that actually might be the right idea. But as a result of my brain moving really fast and landing there, sometimes it's hard for me to articulate, what exactly how did I land on that? Why did that feel so right? Why was that the right conclusion? And so sometimes that takes time, and then I have to sit back and think it was this and this and this, and then I'm like, okay, this is why I landed on that. And that process is different. So I think it was a good skill set for me to learn as someone who's intuitive, as someone who's also introverted, and also I talk a lot. So my personal flaws is I talk a lot. It's hard for me to be succinct. So practicing really helps me be succinct. Over practicing helps me be succinct and help me think through, like, use words or vocabulary, like connect, discover, that is all encompassing. And where I might have used 20 words to say discover, now I just have that language. So like little things like that, like using those vocabulary, and which you can find in like the job posts and stuff like that, that really say it all without having to be long-winded. And then practicing, because really when you are over a talkative person, a detailed person like I am, sometimes talking a lot is part of the anxiety, especially since, like I said, I'm an introvert. I also have social anxiety. So like, sometimes talking just feels calming to me, just to say all the things. And so when you're in the interview, imagine that being amplified by the stress and the pressure of like wanting to, really get the offer or be successful. So practicing really helped me have a clear idea of what I should say or what I would say by the time the interview showed up. And I wasn't tempted to think on the spot and then vomit out what I was thinking on the spot. By the time I was ready to communicate it, I already knew what to say at the high level. Again, I think check your motivations for doing RPM, because, or just check your motivations for, applying to Meta. Like, right now, we are a metaverse company. We're in this game for the long term. We are pushing out products, and excited to try and find product market fit with these new technologies. And this is a new area for a lot of people, most people in general. It's not your Google where the product's been out forever, it's pretty been stable in general, or your Apple, like 50-year company. This is kind of like another huge startup again. And so just be aware that, like, really understand, like, what are your motivations to becoming a PM at Meta? Do you align yourself with the mission? Do you feel like the mission is something you feel excited about? Because once you join, like, the job's not going to be easy, to say the least. It can be fun though if you're in it for the right reasons. For me, I'm in it for the reasons of I'm very passionate. I love new technologies. I'm very entrepreneurial. I love working 0 to 1. I love the risk taking of launching something and not knowing how it's going to work. And I'm also just very passionate about VR technology and all of that. And so this company, as a result, is very much aligned with me and my needs. Obviously, coming from a nonprofit background, having very human-centered mission and very human-centered products, and having a big space to have huge impact in, like, all of those things is what made me really excited about the company in and of itself. I don't think there's a better company that's in alignment with me. And so I'm really grateful that it kind of worked out this way naturally, that this was the only company also that really gave me the due diligence to interview me. Like, this was the only company that actually said, yes, come, we want to interview you, and really give me the opportunity to prove to them that I was a good fit for this role. I never got that at any other company. All the recruiters, all of that, I feel like I was, out of the 250, the 5 people who called me back, like, humored me. I felt humored, or like a check on the box, probably because of my identity. And yeah. Last question that I usually get that I'm going to try to answer. I hope that gave you a lot of gems, but I really think that's at a high level all the things you need to think through. The last question I would answer, and I get this a lot, especially from Black women or underrepresented people who are thinking about joining the program: what is it like as a Black woman working in corporate tech or in RPM? Are you set up for success? So that obviously is 2 questions, but overlaps. Do I feel set up for success in the program? Yes, to a degree. Again, I just laid out for me what are my core reasons, my motivations for joining this company and the work that I plan to do here. Money, I think, like, if you're like haven't never made 6 figures before, I never made more than 40,000. I think my whole career. So coming to this company and making the 115 to start off with, because I have a master's degree, you get 5,000 more. I don't know how much it is now, but that was this in 2019 when I joined. January 2019 is when I joined. So I've been at Meta for 3.5 years now. To know that I was getting paid 115K salary and then like another 6 figures in equity, which I didn't even know what that meant at the time, was just mind-blowing, because I feel like this is work that I would do for free, to be honest, but don't tell them that because, Lord, the money is great. The money is great. But like I said, that's from my perspective of only having worked in nonprofit and then being self-employed. So, so for me, money was like, it already ticked that box. But if you came from like a Google or blah, 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 and you're used to making 150, 200, 250, 115 might be a huge step back for you. And it's going to be a pain point to come to do an RPM program if you're used to making much more money than that. Another pain point is if you want to be promoted fast or to have high leadership visibility. If those two things are a part of your top two. It's not to say that you can't do it. You can definitely do an RPM. You can definitely climb the ladder. You just are a little bit set back because when you start RPM, you start as an entry level person, and entry level is IC3. And so working your way to IC5 can take a couple years, 2 years if you're lucky, 2.5, 3 years if you're normal. And so that might be too slow for you. And it could be very frustrating when you do get to IC4 a year and a half, whatever, later. And, you know, you have friends that are coming in at IC5 and pretty much comparable to the work you're doing. Because let's say you have a long history of experience in some way, shape, or form. It can be very frustrating. So just know that if you're in it for a promotion, it's better to probably just try and come in directly outside of the RPM program. But the trade-off is that you miss the opportunity for meeting other great PM peers that you start with your cohort. They become your family throughout the year and a half. So I think there's a trade-off there. You also get a research trip where you get to travel to 3 different countries. I'm not sure what the latest policy update with COVID is happening. Luckily, my class was able to travel to 3 different countries. Went to Ghana, South Africa, and Brazil in January 2020. So we actually got some, the other half of our RPMs we had to split up because there was 20 of us, but the other half actually went to a lot of Asian countries during and so they actually got some early warnings in January, like, hey, just so you know, there's some viruses going around, we don't know much information, so here's a warning. And they're just like, you know, laughed it off. And only a couple months later, we come back and realize this is like, it was COVID, so they like near missed it. My half of the cohort, we did a research trip to understand emerging technology in developing countries. So that was South Africa, Ghana, and then Brazil. And that was really cool to see all the VR stuff that was happening in all 3 of those countries and emerging tech in general. And we learned a lot. So, I mean, there's definitely trade-offs to it. If you, like I said, if you don't mind being patient and enjoy the experience and enjoying the road, I think RPM is a better place to be. But if you're like, I don't have time to make friends, I'm not here to make friends, I'm here to like get my career off the ground and blah, blah, then I don't know if RPM will be the best place for you. So that's just something to think about, but obviously follow your heart. That's my own perspective. And then if you were to ask me, the other half of that question is, what is it like being a Black woman / Black person? So I have worked at a million jobs before I came to this company, and you name the experience. Is a very common experience that Black women go through. There's a graph that shows it. I will flash it on here. This is it. This is real. This is 100% has been my experience at almost every single company I've worked at before I came to this company. I have been wrongfully fired more times than more times than I can count, a couple times, and got justice for it in some way, shape, or form. I have been harassed, I've been bullied, I've been underestimated to the nth degree, I've been, you name it, I've been, falsely accused of stuff, all the time. I've been ostracized. It just can be it. But I've also been a very strong performer, and no matter what job I've been at, I've always exceeded every single goal that was set before me. So I always knew I was talented, and I have my drive. I'm very passionate. I only do jobs that I know I'm 100% excited about, and I'm going to make it happen. Like, that's who I am. No matter what, you put a problem before me, and if it's something I care about, I'm going to we're solving it, period. It's something's coming out, some solution's gonna come, and that's just who I am. So no matter what job I was at, you couldn't tell me nothing about my performance, but that didn't stop me from experiencing a lot of unhealthy toxicity environments that were more personal. I don't know, I just experienced it all. So when I say this, just know I understand the experience and I'm not speaking naively. I have never been treated more better. I've never, now, again, I say that, it doesn't even feel right to say that. Because I don't want to give the impression that you're not going to experience things. That's just, I'm sorry. Whenever you go into an environment, you're going to, and you're a Black woman, unfortunately, microaggressions and all of that eventually shows up somewhere, because that's just the nature of reality. But on the scale of how much it shows up, and I think what makes all the difference about this company than any other company I worked for, you are wrapped with support to help you navigate out of it. There is accountability, there is justice. Sometimes it's slow, but it does happen. Sometimes it's slow though, but it does happen. I've never been in a situation where justice didn't happen, or things weren't resolved because people came in and who were invested in my career and or invested in that making sure that the culture of the team was healthy, come in and help mediate. And they give you tools to communicate. There's a system set in place to resolve disputes and conflict in a healthy manner. And because it happens at a system level, like bad apples just don't last long in this particular healthy environment. So bad treatment doesn't last long in this healthy environment. And so the culture of the company has helped resolve things or remove things, roadblocks for me, that I never got at any other company before. You know the story. Like sometimes you experience things or conflict or, all that kind of unhealthy behavior from other colleagues. And when you go up or you try to get accountability for it, it ended up turning against you. And so sometimes it makes you feel like you can't speak up about these things and you kind of silently suffer. And then so you have to leave. And sometimes you don't want to leave because it's your job. And sometimes it's just hard because you're a Black woman. And so finding a job that will even hire you and invest in you is really hard. The culture of the company generally is kind, generally is supportive, generally has good intentions, and generally wants to see you win. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be day-to-day things sometimes here and there, but for me the good outweighs the bad tremendously, and I've never felt this is the healthiest environment that I've ever been. So it's the same thing with relationships. There's no such thing as a perfect relationship where you'll never argue and never fight and you never have a negative problem. But how do you resolve it? Is it healthy in terms of the way you resolve it? Then yes. If it's yes, then it's and the good outweighs the bad, then it's likely a great relationship and your values are aligned. Obviously, if there's things happening because of race, consciously at least, probably not a good relationship. But if it's obviously we all have unconscious biases, we all do, and it shows up in different ways. And sometimes the best thing that you can have is a system that naturally checks against it and that naturally helps people think objectively and recognize symptoms of it, and being able to resolve it at that level is sometimes all you can ask for. And I am grateful to say that at this company, that is an experience that I've had. And in terms of other people who look like me, less back then when I started than now. But like I said, sometimes we want people who look like us because sometimes it's hard to be the only one. But now there's just so much more. I feel like the population has quadrupled, if not doubly quadrupled, times two. And so there's a lot more, and the community is very close-knit. We all have chat groups with each other. We're always, supportive of each other. We try to have lunches with each other and all that. There's a lot of different groups internally. The Facebook culture is very community-oriented. Facebook culture is community-oriented. I cannot say that enough. There's millions of communities internally that you can join. Any type of community you can think of. It probably exists similar to how Facebook groups work in general. There's millions of different types of groups. It's the same thing for the company, and they happen at the general level. There's, and all the way down to identity and all of that. And so finding your people and being able to stay in constant contact, ask them for advice, meet with them for coffee chats, share with them, be vulnerable and say, hey, I'm going through this. How would you handle this? Have you ever been through this? What do you recommend? That is all available because the people there are just amazing. And there's more people now to get access to have peer support, peer mentorship from. And of course, through RPM, I think the cohorts are only getting more diverse throughout the years. That is your first family, and that really sets the tone for community and bonding and social network, especially when you're going to a corporate tech environment. If you're like me for the first time, and being able to share information with each other and support each other and help troubleshoot with each other in a safe place where you can be vulnerable, and then that just bonds you even more, and have fun with each other. Like, yeah, I mean, that's all that you can ask for. And then you're going onto your teams, and and so having that counterweight to the day-to-day is just invaluable. I don't know how to explain it otherwise. You can't put money on it, a dollar's value on that. It's probably, RPM was one of the best, especially onboarding was the best, and with my cohort was the best family experience I've ever had in a very long time. I have a lot of social friends, I have a lot of great friends, but it was such a meaningful group, and we all keep in touch, and we all it's been 3 years, and it's just family. You just gain this new family. So yeah, so I hope that answers all your questions. I don't know if that did. Sorry, it was a little bit long-winded. I did give you almost an hour. Usually my coffee chats are around this long anyways. So like I said, I hope I hit all the nails in the head. And if you have any other questions or follow-ups, feel free to ask me in the comments. Good luck with your interview process. Good luck. And yeah, I wish nothing but the best. And remember, practice. I can't stress that enough. All right, have a great week.